Unit 4, Black and White Mary plus a function for qualia, ? Section 1, the Mary Experiment. In 1982, Frank Jackson produced a very famous thought experiment addressing the problem of color qualia. His thought experiment runs as follows. Mary is a brilliant scientist who, for whatever reason, is forced to investigate the world from a black and white room via a black and white television monitor. She specializes in the neurophysiology of vision and acquires, for the purposes of the experiment, all the physical information there is to obtain about what goes on when we see colors. She discovers, for example, just which wavelength combinations from the sky stimulate the retina, and exactly how this produces the uttering of the sentence, "The sky is blue," via the central nervous system, the contraction of the vocal cords, and expulsion of air from the lungs. What will happen when Mary is released from her black and white room or is given a color television monitor? Will she learn anything new or not? Dennett comments quite extensively on this thought experiment, and he believes that the answer to the question at the end is that no, she won't learn anything new. Dennett starts his argument by insisting that the crucial premise is that she has all the physical information. This, he says, is not readily imaginable, so people tend to imagine either that she knows lots and lots, or that she knows everything that modern science knows today about the neurophysiology of color vision. But, as Dennett points out, what we know today is almost nothing. So, if this were all she knew, it wouldn't be surprising that Mary should learn something new when she first saw color. Dennett imagines that Mary would have written down in exquisite detail exactly what physical impression a yellow object or a blue object or a green object, etc., would make on her nervous system before she is shown any colored object. He imagines that they show her a blue banana. According to Dennett, Mary tells the experimenters, quote, "I already knew exactly what thoughts I would have, because, after all, the mere disposition to think about this or that is not one of your famous qualia, is it? I was not in the slightest surprised by my experience of blue. What surprised me was that you should try such a second-rate trick on me. I realize it is hard for you to imagine that I could know so much about my reactive dispositions that the way blue affected me came as no surprise. Of course, it's hard for you to imagine. It's hard for anyone to imagine the consequences of someone knowing absolutely everything physical about anything," end quote. Dennett concedes that his way of telling the story doesn't prove that Mary learns nothing new. But then, he claims, neither does the usual version prove that she does. Rather, the usual version is what he calls an intuition pump that works by making you think that it just seems obvious that she does. The story as an intuition pump achieves this by lulling you into imagining something other than what the premises require. Then it says, quote, "It is of course true that in any realistic, readily imaginable version of the story, Mary would come to learn something. But in any realistic, readily imaginable version, she might know a lot, but she would not know everything physical." Simply imagining that Mary knows a lot and leaving it at that is not a good way to figure out the implications of her having all the physical information, any more than imagining she is filthy rich would be a good way to figure out the implications of the hypothesis that she owned everything. It may help us imagine the extent of the powers her knowledge gives her if we begin by enumerating a few of the things she obviously knows in advance. End quote. Dennett elaborates on the consequences of Mary knowing everything there is to know about color. Quote, "She knows precisely which effects, described in neurophysiological terms, each particular color will have on her nervous system. So the only task that remains is for her to figure out a way of identifying those neurophysiological effects from the inside. You may find you can readily imagine her making a little progress on this. For instance, figuring out tricky ways in which she would be able to tell that some color, whatever it is not yellow or not red. How? Question mark. By noting some salient and specific reaction that her brain would have only to yellow or only for red. But if you allow her even a little entry into her color space in this way, you should conclude that she can leverage her way to complete advanced knowledge, because she doesn't just know the salient reactions, she knows them all." End quote. And consequently, when she finally does get to experience color, she learns nothing new about it because she already knows everything there is to know about color.